One of the first instructions in understanding what is spiritual life, and that's actually described in the introduction to the Bhagavad-gita, is that there are two energies, material energy and spiritual energy. And we come to understand that we are not part of this material energy. We belong to the spiritual energy. And the main difference between these two energies is that one is temporary and one is eternal. With temporary energy, it is always temporary, meanings it's coming into being, grows, stays for some time, produces byproducts, dwindles and vanishes. Or just simply stated, material energy is always breaking down, and we always have to be very alert to upkeep it, to maintain it. People, circumstances change, people's minds change, their attitudes change, individually and collectively. Whereas spiritual, there is no change. The foundation of spiritual energy is that it is never coming into being, doesn't need any, you don't need a GNC store to get vitamin supplements in the spiritual world. Your just spiritual energy is bright and upkeeping all the time. And because it's described that disturbance to the mind is due to not having a final goal. When one understands that Krishna is God, and that you are his eternal part and parcel, and you are meant to serve him and to please him, when you're completely convinced of that, that is the final goal. That is the Param-gati. And then there is peace. That is the spiritual world. Vaikunta. Vai means without, kunta, without anxiety. So when spiritual energy mercifully and compassionately comes into this material world, it is a chance for those who are in the frothing ocean of temporality, always being battered this way and that, changeless, uncertain. If they remain firm to those elements of spiritual energy that are given, then one's position is always secure. So, Krishna's name, his instructions, his quality, everything about Krishna is non-dual absolute truth and is infallibly solid. So, the Bhagavad-gita in particular is Krishna's gift to each and every one of us in this material world. It's not that Krishna is just speaking to Arjuna. He's giving Bhagavad-gita, instructing all of us. So we're celebrating a milestone here that Atmanivedana and Subhangada and many devotees who have assisted them over these 8 years, and especially those who are assisting him now. You have a lot to be happy, because to maintain spiritual energy, Bhagavad-gita as it is, in this material world, and what to speak of the king or citadel of all changing, frothing uncertainty, New York City, it is a great feat. It's described of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or passion, goodness, and ignorance. It's very easy to create something, and it's even easier to destroy something. Let's get out that wrecking ball and let's get angry and yell and scream and smash and, But to maintain something as it is without compromise, with strict allegiance to the will of God and his authorized representatives, this is the highest mode of goodness. So Krishna very much appreciates, and because to do like this, the proof of the pudding is in the doing, so to speak. So you show your mantle by doing it over time. That's why due respect, not artificial or concocted respect, should be given to those who are elder in the path, and that they have actually accomplished giving their life in a perceivable way to the service of God. So we'll hear more about this and the individual and collective achievements of you all later on as the evening progresses. We have heard. So we're beginning the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, and it's interesting to note, we'll hear that Srila Prabhupada tells us that actually the Bhagavad-gita is completed in 17 chapters. And it actually, the 18th chapter is just a summary of the preceding 17 chapters. This is the nature of pure spiritual sound vibration, is that one cannot get enough. Actually, the Bhagavatam ended after 3 or 4 chapters in the 12th canto, but the sages at Naimisharanya, headed by Shonaka, didn't want to let Sutta Goswami stop, so they asked him other questions about Markandeya Rishi and the disciplic succession maintainers of the Puranic literatures. And then the Bhagavatam was summarized again in 2 chapters, Glories of Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavatam summarized. So there's an extra 12 chapters. And we see sometimes when we have a very enlivening devotee speaking Krishna Katha, and we maybe run over time, there is a time, but we have to hear more. So that's Krishna. He's going to give us more, which is chapter 18, the conclusion of renunciation. So this is text 1. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyag, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. Let's all say together. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyag, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Actually, the Bhagavad-gita is finished in 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna stresses that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. In the first 6 chapters, stress was given to devotional service. Yogi nam api sarvesham. Quote, of all yogis or transcendentalists, one who always thinks of me within himself is best. Unquote. In the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. In the third 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation, and activities of material nature and transcendental nature and devotional service were described. It was concluded that all acts should be performed in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, represented by the words Om Tat Sat, which indicate Vishnu, the Supreme Person. The third part of Bhagavad-gita has shown that devotional service and nothing else is the ultimate purpose of life. This has been established by citing past acharyas and the Brahma Sutra the Vedanta Sutra. Certain impersonalists consider themselves to have a monopoly on the knowledge of Vedanta Sutra, but actually the Vedanta Sutra is meant for understanding devotional service, for the Lord himself is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra, and he is its knower. That is described in the 15th chapter. In every scripture, every Veda, devotional service is the objective. That is explained in the Bhagavad-gita. As in the 2nd chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described, in the 18th chapter, also the summary of all instruction is given. The purpose of life is indicated to be renunciation and attainment of the transcendental position above the 3 material modes of nature. Arjuna wants to clarify the 2 distinct subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, namely renunciation, tyag, and the renounced order of life, sannyas. Thus he is asking the meaning of these 2 words. 2 words used in this verse to address the Supreme Lord, Rishikesh and Keshi Nishudana, are significant. Rishikesh is Krishna, the master of all senses, who can always help us to attain mental serenity. Arjuna requests him to summarize everything in such a way that he can remain equiposed. And remember, he's just about ready to give his decision that, yes, I will fight in this massive battle of Kurukshetra, in such a way that he can remain equiposed. Yet he has some doubts, and doubts are always compared to demons. He therefore addresses Krishna as Keshi Nishudana. Keshi was a most formidable demon. It was the gigantic horse. He came at the very end of Krishna's stay in Vrindavan. There was a place where Krishna killed the Keshi demon on the bank of the Yamuna called Keshi Ghat, and that is described as the most powerful place to take bath in the Yamuna, yielding the highest results in the Mathura Mahatmya, compiled by Rupa Goswami. Keshi was a most formidable demon who was killed by the Lord. Now Arjuna is expecting Krishna to kill the demon of doubt. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Menobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Maybe it could be made louder. So
instead, leave it like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sarato Pangur Mamamada Matergati Matsarvasva Padambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyad Vrindaranya Kalpajrumada Srimad Ratna Gara Sringhasanasto Srimad Radha Shilagovinda Devo Prastalabi Savyamano Smarami Sriman Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhattatatastita Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopinatha Shriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshvari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Hare Arjuna Vacha Sanyasasya Mahabaho Tattvamichami Veditum Tyagasya Cha Rishikesha Pritakeshi Nishudana. Almighty Armed One, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation and of the renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. So Prabhupada in his purport here reveals to us, as we were saying, that the Bhagavad-gita was completed in 17 chapters, and as the second chapter, contents of the Gita summarized, the entire Bhagavad-gita is summarized with the main foundational instruction being emphasized repeatedly in the second chapter, that you are not the body, you are spirit soul, and that the soul cannot be harmed or destroyed or altered or hampered as the material body can in this material world. And similarly, the 18th chapter is supplementary and also summarizing. But in particular, the 18th chapter more strongly makes the same point that was made, but more strongly, that devotional service is the most confidential path of knowledge. And Prabhupada describes that the entire Bhagavad-gita is meant to bring one to the position of rendering pure devotional service. Devotee offers prayers to Goddess Vrindadevi, in particular, please give me the privilege of devotional service. Devotional service, or activities sheltered under the internal potency, are very, very special activities. We're all very much familiar with activities conducted under the material energy, especially in a big city like this. There's so many things that can be done, you could do to try to get happiness, but one coming to the even threshold of self-realization, what to speak of one who's actually got, as Prabhupada says in one place, a foothold into the house of bhakti, will realize that all of this so-called variety is more or less different permutation of the same thing. Just when one becomes a devotee, for example, and follows the regulative principles, no meat eating, no fish, eating fish and meat and things, then all of a sudden, how many restaurants and eating places and snack shacks and stands on the sidewalk you have absolutely no relationship with anymore. There's no need to even look at these places. Or I give up illicit sex. So all of a sudden, so many places that are centered and catered to such sordid affairs you have nothing to do with. Bars, discotheques, sultry movies, sleazy fashion stores. Useless. What else? Drinking, There's one place here near the Ukrainian Museum. What is it? O'Leary's Ale House. Since 1859, and all ale is well, right? All is well, right? Who cares? It's meaningless. So, one is interested in activities that don't get one into trouble. And practically speaking, it's rare to find any place that's offering, and you have to spend money. We have to give Lakshmi Devi to engage, Lakshmi Devi becomes turned into Maya, into the illusory potency, and basically speaking, your hard-earned work and money, you're using it to purchase your ticket to hell. You're using the money to further entangle you in this material world. So the devotee comes to understand that actually everything is the energy of the Lord, but this material energy is a perverted reflection of the superior spiritual energy. And if there's any energy, and of any aspect of this material energy that is shaped or permeated in any way by the materialistic people, if it can be used in the service of the Lord, purely it's accepted, otherwise it's rejected. That's why, for the most part, especially in previous times before this whole demoniac culture has sprung up and made us think that we have to live in a big city like this, and we have, it just creates all these unnecessary problems, that weren't there when people lived by nature. And then we spend all our time, with science and technology, discovering ways to counteract the problems that we created in the first place. And we're very proud that we've created these things which seemingly, blow on the boil or put a temporary Band-Aid on a huge gash with the blood still coming out, and we think that we're okay. But in the end, the four main problems of life remain: birth, death, disease, and old age. Again, all material bodies, whether they come from seeds, from embryos, from eggs, or perspiration, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You cannot live forever in this material world. No matter how much you try to make a permanent claim here, you will have to be kicked out. You will leave. You will have to go. And where you're going next, unless you practice self-realization, you do not know where you're going. And that's extremely risky. Like, who here in this room doesn't know where they're going when we close up tonight? No one. We all know where we're going. And do we know how we're going to get there? And we feel confident it's going to work. Maybe the train is delayed or something or whatever. There's a traffic jam. But ultimately, we'll get home. So, who am I and what are my real activities? This knowledge is essential to be acquired in this human form of life. And only with such knowledge can actually one really be a human being, because a human being conquers over death. Otherwise, cats and dogs and lower animals, pigs, they die too. But what is their destination? So if human beings simply live like animals, actually when animals eat, sleep, mate, and defend, they don't cause a terrible, ecological imbalance on the planet. But when human beings do so extravagantly, Ishabashyamidam Sarvam Yak King Jagat Yam Jagat, everything animate and inanimate that is within this universe is owned and controlled by the Lord. Therefore, one should accept one's quota, that which is allotted to him, and one should not encroach upon other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So, when human beings neglect the duty of self-realization and Krishna consciousness, devotional service, then they create a hellish pandemonium that's not fit for any sane person to live. We don't have to be working in this industrial age, which was set up some 120 to 150 years ago, that we have to work like crazy, so many hours a day, back and forth, transportation and oil supply and all these things. These things they're ugra karma, unnecessary activity. Instead of having very high intellectual thinking, which ultimately discerns matter from spirit, that which is real from that which is permanent from that which is temporary, that which is favorable from that which is unfavorable, that which is desirable, shreyas, that means a permanent lasting value, from that which is so-calledly happiness in the beginning, but turns into poison and disaster in the end, preyas. That is intelligence. Where is that intelligence? Is it being taught in these big universities? How much does it cost to go to NYU and Columbia for a semester? What's the price these days? $25,000. Not including the room and board, right? Okay. And what do you get? And do you become self-realized after paying all that money? No. You become more lusty, you become more greedy, you become more envious, and you become very proud. I'm very proud that I'm more lusty, greedy, and envious. See, I'm doctorately decorated with this degree to prove it, Simple living, where everything is done by nature, very high thinking. If one is actually understood that they're not their body, and their eternal loving relationship with Krishna is clarified, and they're fearless in all situations, that is an intelligent person, not otherwise. So Arjuna is asking in this verse, what is the real meaning of sannyas, or renunciation? And Prabhupada doesn't really address that so much in this first verse, but Krishna will go on to explain. We'll just briefly touch on that because that's been asked by Arjuna in this verse, but it was put to me by Sasha Prabhu. I can go further, but I don't think so because the important deep subject matters. So we'll just touch a little bit on what Krishna says, but you should continue reading verse 2 and 3 onwards progressively. Some people think that renunciation means to give up all activities based on material desire, and Krishna clarifies that you do not give up activities, but you perform your natural activities, but you do it for pleasing Krishna. In the second canto, it's described that human society is the residential quarters of the Lord. In other words, the ultimate form of the Lord is a human-like form like we have. 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 ears. And actually, Krishna's activities in the Param Gati, the Param Dham, the supreme abode, the topmost planet, Goloka Vrindavan, seemingly resemble activities that we do here. But there's a great gulf of difference because there's no material inebriety or any desire for mundane sense gratification. So understanding the difference between Krishna's sense gratification and gratification of material bodies in this material world takes considerable purification and clarification of one's intelligence. And that is why this human form of life, it's recommended from the tender age of childhood, one begins to practice sadhana bhakti of devotional service. One time, Prabhupada was challenged at a university by a professor, "Why are you coming here, sir, and instructing the young people?" And he kind of, Prabhupada fired back, "Why are you instructing the young people?" to the professor. Because, you're supposed to learn things when you're young, so you have that foundational knowledge and education for the rest of your life. But Krishna consciousness is so wonderful that from whatever point of understanding its urgency, at any age, one should take it up. One is not disqualified because one is so-called the late starter. But in a practical society, practically spiritually organized society, Krishna consciousness should be begun right from the beginning. And ultimately, family life, husband and wife, duly married and staying together out of responsibility to the family that they will have, to the children, raise them to also become devotees of the Lord like themselves and not give them up to what's described in the first canto when the sages were glorifying Sutta Goswami, who had heard the Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. "We think we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just that we may accept you as captain of the ship to guide us across this dangerous ocean of Kali Yuga, which destroys and deteriorates all good qualities and virtue of the human being." And Prabhupada says in that purport that if an unbiased person observes, he'll see that the children of this age are being intentionally sent to the slaughterhouses of so-called education. Again, back to that point, real education is to know the difference between matter and spirit and the controller of both, and who you are and what your responsibility is, so you do not entangle yourself in the karma bandhana, the chain victimization of bad karma, which forces you to reincarnate in many different species of life with no hope for liberation for millions and millions of years. So, Krishna goes on to say, that one should engage in one's natural propensities under superior guidance of saintly persons who are honestly practicing the tenets of Krishna's words, which are called the Shastras, and authorized acharyas, or spiritual masters, who have taken the very great charge and responsibility to guide disciples and the people in general out of the darkness of illusion, crossing the ocean of material, of the ocean of repeated birth and death, and achieving their siddhadeha, spiritual body, where they can actually become not only just peaceful, but completely ecstatically happy. Only devotional service and its practice affords that and grants that ultimately. No other process. There is a similar section in Divinity and Divine Service of the second chapter of the first canto, verses 28 and 29. Vasudeva para Veda, Vasudeva para Maka, Vasudeva para Yoga, Vasudeva para Kriya, Vasudeva param Jnanam, Vasudeva param Tapa, Vasudeva paro Dharmo, Vasudeva paragati. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. One disciple was trying to catch up with Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk, and it was a very cold day, and the devotee had run out barefoot. And, Prabhupada was saying, "What are you doing? Where are your shoes and socks?" He said, "Prabhupada, to follow you, I'm prepared to walk over burning coals or or whatever." And Prabhupada said, this material world, to try to perform devotional service in this world is filled with so much austerity already. Why create more unnecessarily? The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him, not for gymnastic bodily exercises or to get, a more sexy bodily appeal, please. That is not what yoga is all about. Yogi nam api sarvesham madgatarein taratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Of all yogis, he was most intimately united with me in loving devotional service. He is the best. Prabhupada landed in America in a very small and amazing pocket of time in 1966, 1967, where 50% of the U.S. population, 180 million at the time, 50% were under the age of 25. It's called the baby boomers, right? And their watchword was, never trust anyone over the age of 30. They were intensely looking for alternative lifestyles, turning away from the inane, materialism of their parents, and their grandparents and consumer culture, etc., etc. And here comes Prabhupada, 70 years old, and people were in love with him. He was more beautiful than the most so-called beautiful psychedelic boy or girl or whatever you want to think. Why? Because his love of Krishna, unprecedentedly beautiful. And ultimately, as we were saying, the qualities of the Lord are non-different than the Lord's knowledge and everything else about him. So Krishna's beauty and the spiritual bodies of the devotees were expanded to his internal pleasure for himself giving potency are so stunningly beautiful that they put even the so-called most greatest beauty queen, or what do they call Mr. Universe, what do they call, handsome, make them look like frogs by comparison. Just a tiny semblance of beauty and handsomeness. Practically nothing compared to the beauty of the Lord and his eternal devotees engaged in their eternal loving leelas or pastimes. All fruitive activities, so that's yoga. And the supreme yoga in this age of Kali Yuga is Harinam Sankirtan, chanting the holy name of the Lord. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is the supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. And the greatest austerity that one can perform in this Kali Yuga is to push on the personal movement of Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his Sankirtan movement, the chanting of his holy names. Whatever it takes to keep the non-stop performance, not performance, we think of that in terms of, like busking in the subway, right? I have a nice letter from a devotee godbrother who's a lawyer. They're not busking in the subway for money. They are practicing their First Amendment constitutional right. Any interference with my client's right, First Amendment right, would constitute a violation, of which a remedy is given under 42 USC-105, and all the police, they're trained to understand what that means, which means the right of a U.S. citizen to sue any law enforcement agency for infringement on their constitutional rights. And here in New York City, if an NYPD does that, then the department's not going to back them up in court. They got to face the music and the financial interpitude or whatever themselves, right? So when they read that, it's like showing a cross to a vampire. Thank you very much. I hope that this letter promotes understanding and harmony, and will make further action from my office unnecessary. Thank you. He is the supreme knowledge. I will not acquire knowledge unless that knowledge will help me to serve you. And we see in the case of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was a college dropout, by the way. Actually, he had completed his final exams, and he was called to take his diploma, but he had went to a British colonial-controlled school, and a high-class one, too, in Calcutta, which was the British government's controlling city. And because he became a follower of Gandhi and, non-cooperation, boycott everything British, that's before he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and switched his allegiance to the movement of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But by Srila Prabhupada's service to Krishna through his authorized representative, his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada became the knower of everything and could outchase, outdistance, outsmart, outwit anybody in any so-called field, no matter how expert. Economists, socialists, social leaders, politicians, scientists, nuclear physicists, all of them. Prabhupada had their number. Why? Because Krishna gives the knowledge how to deal with these people. Because all knowledge is awarded by Krishna, even nescient knowledge. The thief is praying to God, give me the knowledge which house to break into and how to not get caught. And the same owner is praying to God how I should not have thieves come in here and how to protect my house. So Krishna seemingly has a very difficult, contradictory job to do to supply intelligence to everybody. He's doing, but how much better is the intelligence given to a pure devotee than the atheist? He is the supreme, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadevagni Nirvarpanam, Shreya Karaiva Chandrika Vitaranam. This Sankirtan movement cleanses all anarthas, all material misconceptions, doubts, demons, Keshi Sudana, cleanses all the dust accumulated for years, extinguishing completely repeated birth and death. Vidyavadu Jivanam. It is the life and soul of all knowledge, of all it is to be learned and all it is to be taught after you've learned it, and if you're qualified to teach it, the culmination of everything is the congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion, it is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. To know him, religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. The time is that we should stop by 7:30?
I think Sasha told me 7:45. I think she told me that.
Well, because Sasha tell us because we're doing extra things tonight, right?
Isn't that what you told me, Sasha?
Yes.
Okay, I'm correct.
But that's
Don't listen to him.
Including the kirtan.
No, that's not what you told me. You didn't tell me that. What time?
Well, anyway, any questions or comments thus far? Why don't we see how we do with that? It's 10 past 7. Khalil.
I have just one question that when I was reading the verse, Arjuna refers to Krishna as Almighty Arm. And I just didn't understand because like Krishna wasn't fighting. So does that mean that Krishna was fighting, or what's the reference to Krishna as mighty arm?
I would like to have a explanation from the acharyas at my mental fingertips, but I don't. But we can understand, just like the choice was given to Duryodhan, what would you like? Would you like Krishna's armies, or would you like Krishna? So he chose the armies. And Arjuna was quite happy to have Krishna, because Krishna is the supreme person. Actually, later you can read in the first canto that when Krishna departed and Arjuna came back to report this to Maharaj Yudhishthir, and he was remembering all of his beautiful dealings with Krishna. And he was describing Krishna as he diminished the enthusiasm, dexterity, and military abilities of all these great generals like Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, Jayadratha, and others. They were just like invincible oceans, like gigantic whales that could swallow little fish. But simply by having Krishna on the chariot, and he didn't lift a finger to fight, all of them were subdued. So, because Arjuna is a devotee and understand, and he had just seen the universal form, thousands of arms and and faces. It's not bewildered.
That's a brilliant answer.
What comes to mind? Anything more, or else? Not or else, but anything else. The chanting of the holy name in this Kali Yuga, because everything else is practically impossible to be done with any real success, because of just the difficulty of this age, that everything has just been simplified simply by chanting Hare Krishna. So our own personal standing, or locus standi, above the material energy, and gaining more and more eligibility to be admitted into the internal potency, is affected by chanting the holy name. So we distribute the chanting of the holy name to everyone, but ultimately, for the real effect to be there, one should be prepared to come forward and give up the main pillars of sinful life. Sinful life meaning activities that are based against the natural seva bhavana, or the natural spiritual service aptitude of your soul in your original constitutional position. So any sensible person would readily agree to this. Srila Prabhupada says in one place, as long as one is not envious of the principle and one carries on in a humble way, then one will reach supreme perfection by the grace of the Lord. Chanting the holy name for this, all the while in keeping up one's material life, is like trying to light a fire and pouring water on it at the same time. They're two contradictory activities. They don't work. And it's actually described that even just one pure devotee on this planet with billions of people, just one pure devotee chanting the pure holy name is enough to have the rainfall and nature balanced and everything, because Krishna is pleased, and all the demigods in charge of universal maintenance are pleased when Krishna is pleased. So the presence of one pure devotee is more valuable than countless people chanting the offended name of Krishna. So we should be very vigilant, and we should be very enthusiastic to not be nam operatis or offenders to the holy name. We can very quickly, just with simple determination, come to the clearing stage of chanting. This is called namabhas. That's likened unto the very first hint of the light of dawn when it comes in the morning. That's enough to scare away fearfulness of ghosts and highway robbers and all of the kind of bad elements that thrive in the deep darkness of night, because you know that the dawn is upon us, the sun will rise, and there'll be full light. When one's knowledge, when one is enlightened with this transcendental knowledge, it's like knowledge that when the sun rises up in the daytime, it reveals everything. So that is namabhas, and Krishna, he takes charge of such a personality who's chanting the holy name under proper guidance, and step by step, Krishna will bring you to pure spiritual emotion and pure spiritual intelligence as you practice, what are they called? The regulative principles of freedom. Gross materialists, they think, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. What do you guys do for fun? But actually, by stopping these things, we're actually opening the door to unlimited pleasure. Today is the day of ascendancy back to the topmost spiritual world of one great devotee of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, Lochan Das Thakur. And he's known for writing one of the important biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called the Chaitanya Mangala, auspicious activities of Lord Chaitanya, particularly Lord Chaitanya's early pastimes. And he has written the song Gora Nityananda Doya, which goes Parama Karuna Pahu Dwijana Nitai Gora Chandra Saba Avatar Sarasaromani Kevala Anandakanda. That Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they are the essence of all incarnations, and their way of self-realization, chanting and dancing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, is simply joyful. They are so potent in their distribution that they make even the most stone-like, hard-hearted, materialistic people cry in tears of love of Godhead. So the ultimate, topmost philanthropic work is to distribute the holy name, and that distribution should be done by pure devotees, not nam operatis, people using the holy name to become famous, to make money, to get some type of material advantage, some political reason, whatever. It should be done simply for the pleasure of Krishna. And Krishna's pleasure in this Kali Yuga is very, very simple. He wants to see people given the knowledge and facility to get out of this hellish pandemonium. That's God's desire. So when you take up that desire of the Supreme Person and make that the main desire of your life, that is the express lane back home, back to Godhead. And it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that all a person might sacrifice with his wealth, his words, his intelligence, his reputation, a sacrifice for the Sankirtan movement, the personal movement of God himself, not animal rights or cancer cure or feeding the starving refugees. These are all, people shouldn't suffer, but these are temporary problems that come about from the ultimate problem of forgetfulness of Krishna. A pure devotee's vision is equal, and he sees suffering of everyone equally, forgetfulness of their lost relationship with Krishna, whether one is so-called high, so-called low, rich, poor, by material estimation, ugly, beautiful, whatever. These things are all ephemeral and inconsequential in the ultimate scheme of things. A pure devotee sees who everyone is, sleeping under the spell of the illusory energy, and what is their eternal relationship with Krishna. And he dedicates his entire life to waking up sleeping souls by distributing the only medicine that will be effective, the pure holy name of Krishna, of which the books expanded from the holy name of Krishna, from Krishna himself, such as Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, are meant to convince people fully, intellectually, philosophically, and completely emotionally, yes, to chant and dance in the ecstasy of love of Godhead in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, as all the greatest elite intelligentsia of the time were personally converted by the Lord to do so. Any other questions or comments?
Very nice class. So I have a question. In Arjuna asked similar question in chapter 5th. He asks that out of sannyasa and karma, which is better, karma yoga. So Krishna.
He who lights no fire and performs no work, right? That's in the 5th chapter. That better you perform your prescribed duty. Acts of sacrifice, here it says right here, acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, they purify even the great souls. Or in other words, if you don't do these things while you're still materially embodied, what are you going to do? You have to do something. Nobody can stand on the platform of inactivity even for a second. So these activities, they correspond to the pleasure-giving activities of reciprocation between the Lord and his eternal devotees in the spiritual world.
So this Tyaga refers to karma yoga then?
Fruit of activities. One of the offenses in chanting the holy name, it's to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna one of the
Vedic ritualist activities.
Given in the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas, fruit of activities. It's like a child has to take medicine. I don't want to get so I'm going to give you a candy. And the candy has the medicine in it. Oh, give me the candy. The goal is not to take the candy. The goal is to take the medicine. So the medicine is to trick the foolish child or the rambunctious child to take his medicine. So the rambunctious conditioned soul doesn't want, I want a house and a car and a color TV, Swami Jai Jagadisha, Jai Jagadisha, Swami Jai Jagadisha. Religious activities with a desire for fruit of results is practically the standard, if there's any so-called religion left at all in the world. So like Prabhupada noted that all these big churches and temples, churches, you see these big cathedrals, when were many of them erected? 150, 180, 200, 250 years ago. That's when this country was first being, westward ho, and, slaughtering all the Native American Indians and setting up settlements and carving out states and killing all the buffalo and glorious American history, in God we trust, So they're praying to God, that I strike it big in a California gold rush, minor 49er, So now we made it big. We conquered the whole continent. We've killed everything and everybody, and we're the world, more than that, we're the world dominating leader, especially after World War II. We just beat Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Who the hell are you? We're the king of the castle. We're the top dog on the hill. So we don't need the church no more. Now the factory and industry, well, not so much that, but software, right? this age of Kali, people who have huge amounts of money are considered to be worshipable. They must be the most intelligent people, not the Brahmins, who are not interested in material things but are interested in spiritual knowledge. The society is topsy-turvy. We're just reading, that which is irreligious they take as religious, and that which is religious they take as irreligious, always striving in the wrong direction. Anything else?
Kirtan.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Or Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bo.
Hare Krishna.